But we got through that. So it finally in pieces, through prosecutor being my intermediary with the sheriff, got some data back, and it's raw. There hasn't been a lot of clarifications from the sheriff on it, but what I found was disturbing, and I wanted to bring that out today. I asked my staff at that point to put together a policy white paper for me, and we'll be handing that out to members of the media today that want it, or any citizens. We have some copies available in a press conference. But here's the bottom line of what we've talked about. First of all, let me say one more thing in preface. I understand that flock safety cameras can and should be used as a legitimate law enforcement tool. I'm not devaluing the aspect of it that can save lives, find people, and locate property. So that is core, not my issue, that we should not have a legitimate law enforcement use for flock. Where it tends to cross the line into mass surveillance and how quickly we've done that without regulatory or control, that is what concerns me. A tool is like anything else. It's how it's used and what the safeguards are. You pick up a chainsaw, it has a stopgap. If you put the saw, the blade stops spinning. If you're on a forklift and you back up, there's beeping lights on the back. So this is not trying to take a tool away from anybody. This is trying to make the tool safe for everybody. And I don't think we have those safeguards in place in Lucas County today. So our bottom line is Lucas County should not renew or expend flock data access until an independent audit establishes exactly whose searches reach county camera data for what purpose and under what legal authority. So again, not trying to take a tool away, but to protect the citizens from mass surveillance. The top line numbers that struck me most was over 900,000 searches of Lucas County data occurred in a 30-day period. 900 and some thousand. I think that averaged out to 21,000 a day for Lucas County data, unfiltered. 3,200 and some different law enforcement agencies requested those 904,000 requests of our data. So the question is, why is this so broad? And what are they looking for? What are the legitimate uses? So I go back to the sheriff's policy. And the sheriff policy is almost like open for business sign. Anybody can use it. This policy says very clearly, any legitimate law enforcement agency can access Lucas County data. Okay. For what cause? He says this. They can access it, but they do not need probable cause. They do not even need suspicious of any criminal activity. No suspicion of a crime, no probable cause, take our data. I find that policy concerning. It's almost like an open admission. Come get whatever you want for whatever purpose. I find that disturbing. So based on these facts, open admissions, 900,000 searches, 3,200 agencies. I asked more questions, and I haven't got the answers yet. And Sheriff, please help me get the answers. Maybe I can understand better if there's some answers. His answer yesterday was he will not do anything. He's going to continue, and he brought back the boogeymen of serial killers from decades before. That tells me I don't think he's taking these requests seriously. We would like him to. I think it's a serious conversation, and we should get some response. I'm afraid he's operating from a premise that I think he has contempt prior to investigation. Not a good way to get information, to have contempt prior to the investigation. So I'm not here to make you contemptuous, Sheriff. I'm here to help us inform the community on how our data is being released. We had a top 10 data searches go on, and the top 10, most of them are not even local law enforcement agencies. One of the top ones was Houston, Texas, Texas Department of Public Safety, FBI, Hillsborough County, South Florida, Harris County, Texas, Palm Beach County. These are communities outside of Toledo, outside of the state. They're searching for our data without explanation why or what context that they're looking for. That is troubling to me. I think Sheriff's also quoted probably in the Free Press earlier this year saying he was going to limit data access to statewide only, the state of Ohio. This has gone national. This has gone without any kind of breaks on the system. So again, I'm not asking for the tool to be dismantled. I'm asking for the tool to be regulated for the protection of our county. And I know there's a balance between privacy and law enforcement. I think this is skewed so far under the private. This is mass surveillance at scale of our data. There's 28 sites in Lucas County that he has cameras up. He has 2 mobile units. This is producing a lot of data, and I can't understand why. I want to know how his access to the 3,200 community was granted. Does he get an individual request from each community? Can I access your data? Where's the record of that request? Where's the record of when it was granted? Is it one request only and then it's open for business the rest of the way through? These are substantial questions that need real answers, not a return of I'm going to do what I want to do and I'm not modifying anything. Interestingly enough, last week, Flock itself modified its data collection in response to upgrowing concerns across the community. Flock itself has taken their default policy from 30 days of holding the data to 7. That's not taking anybody's tool away from them. That's responsible management of data. For them to make a pretty good move like that, I think we need to listen to and we need to go along with. The other thing is, I noticed one of the counties that use this a lot is Harris County, Texas. Just last week, they modified their ability to interact with Flock camera because of abuse. This very county that's accessing the top 10 has severely limited and curtailed their Flock data to be used and spread around. I think the time has come for Lucas County and the Lucas County Sheriff to take this seriously. That's a big number, that's hyperscale. There's lacking of evidence of how it's being used, and I'm calling for an audit. I think an audit by an outside third party is fair, it's reasonable. I will make no conclusions of what it might come to. The audit is the audit, but not to agree to a third party unbiased audit. I'm not sure he can be unbiased about this. He tried to deny access at first. His policies are wide open, and I don't see him being collaborative with us to do it. And those are just the facts as I see them. So I'm calling for the audit. I'm calling for a review of this data. I think the data that I have, I want us to push out to Lucas County residents. You are being surveilled, and with no particular reason that we can discern. Please give me some discernment, Sheriff. You have not yet, and I think we need to. So at this point, that's the call. Please pause, like many other counties have done this week, and we have a list if people want to share them later. In August itself, there is a retrenchment of people sharing Flock data the way it's been used before. We're not alone. We're not that special. We just want to be fair to our citizens. I want to be responsible to the 4th and 15th Amendment of unreasonable searches, some searches or seizure. We have a right to our privacy. I respect law enforcement, but I think this needs curtailed. No. I've been joined, fortunately, by some members of Toledo City Council who are asking many of the same questions. Thank you, members of the community, to showing up and stand here with me. At this point, I'd ask Nick Comis to come forward and make some statements.
Thank you so much. And good morning, everybody. To me, Flock and mass surveillance pose a dangerous threat to our community. And all of us should be aware of it. Flock cameras are certainly being presented as a public safety tool, and I understand the desire for prevention of crime and solving serious offenses, but every member of City Council wants a safer community, but public safety cannot be separated from civil liberties. And we cannot make our community safer by making every single person a suspect. We're not simply talking about a camera taking a picture, we're talking about a database that can tell any person searching where your car has been, when you were there, and the forms and patterns to monitor your everyday movements. This is happening to all of you. Flock is about surveillance, not just cameras. Being visible in public should not automatically mean permanently being tracked. Imagine every trip you make to work, a doctor's office, a friend's house, a place of worship, or to the grocery store. They can all become a data point. We need to ask why the government should be able to collect and retain information about innocent people simply because they drove past a camera. The Constitution protects more than our right to avoid being arrested. It also protects our ability to live, associate, speak, worship, organize, and move through our community without unnecessary government surveillance. As a city council member, I do not want our residents to ask themselves, will the government know I was there every time they enter their vehicle? I want to be precise here. I'm not claiming every individual license plate photo is automatically an unconstitutional search. Courts have disagreed about where the Fourth Amendment projections apply to automatic license plate reader technology. Flock themselves reference a 2025 Virginia appellate decision holding ALPR technology did not require a warrant in that specific case. This does not end the constitutional question. The more the government collects, the more powerful the system becomes. A single vehicle observation is one thing, but a searchable history of someone's movements is a very different thing. We should not build a massive surveillance infrastructure first and wait for the courts to tell us years later whether or not we crossed a constitutional line. Concerns over misuse of the flock system is not just a what if anymore. We now have evidence of how authorized users have abused the technology for their own personal gain. A Washington Post investigation published on August 2nd reported at least 50 law enforcement officers had been charged with or accused of misusing flock. In Haines City, Florida, a police officer has been accused of using flock cameras to track his estranged wife more than 700 times between September 24 and June 2026. In Pasadena, Texas, an officer was accused of using flock to stalk a female coworker. TPD shares data with that city. Per their flock transparency portal, we know that they're sharing data with Pasadena, Texas. Just days ago in New Bedford, Massachusetts, a police officer used flock cameras to track an ex-girlfriend. The danger is not just imagined, it is current and happening all over the country. I believe our community can be both safe and free. We should not have to choose between public safety and the rights of residents. We should ask whether we have built a system with too much power and too little oversight. Public safety is important, but so is the freedom to live our lives without being watched, tracked, stalked, or harassed. To me, it's the literal opposite of freedom. The idea that we can't move freely. The idea that somebody has a notion of where we've been all the time. That's not freedom. What's even more troubling is that the city of Toledo uses tax dollars to pay for flock. In fact, we pay about $406,000 annually on this system. This total amount would have potentially allowed the police department to pay an additional 5 officers to be on the street. These are faces that you would see in your neighborhoods, schools, and events, not cameras. Bill, it's Bill. These are faces that you would see in your neighborhoods, schools, and events, not cameras that would be used to track your movements. If we want safer neighborhoods, we need additional officers, not cameras. So I'm going to join Commissioner Gerken in asking for the city to do an audit. I think that the city needs to seriously take a look at what our policy is around, quite frankly, any technology and AI usage, and be very clear about who we're sharing with, what we're sharing, and why. Our residents deserve the ability to know that they can move freely in our city, that they can exist as an innocent person without having to be tracked. It's the least that we could do. Government hasn't historically been particularly friendly to the folks that they are surveilling. So let's all remember that.
Good morning, everybody. Erin Kramer, Toledo City Council. I thank Commissioner Gerken for his leadership on this. I also thank Councilmember Comives, who has been very vocal in fighting against this for years, sometimes all by himself. And I'm very proud that there are several members of Toledo City Council who are now joining him in that fight. And I will say, I've talked to Councilmember Gaddis. She could not be here today, but she has already put in a request to Toledo Police Department to audit these flock cameras in Toledo. And I stand behind her. We've already had to vote, against flock funding twice this year. I've only been on City Council for 8 months, and I've already voted against it twice, and it's coming up again. They just want to add more cameras, and that is not what our citizens want. You can see we have some great Toledoans here today joining us. I work for the citizens of Toledo, and I have heard them loud and clear that they do not want these cameras. I do not condone anybody cutting down the cameras, but you can see people are frustrated. They do not want to be surveilled when they're driving around their city. And I think we do have to see what we can do to limit that. I am all for public safety. I want our neighborhoods to be safe, but also I want our residents to have that freedom to drive around and to feel like they are not being watched everywhere they go and they're not suspects for something that, they're just trying to live their lives. So I want to thank Commissioner Gerken, I want to thank Councilmember Comives, and I especially want to thank the folks who are here today and all the folks who are emailing us and calling us and talking to us at events and telling us we do not want more flock cameras in our city. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everybody. Let me find one more point and I'll close up. Just since in August and May, here is a list of communities that have either canceled or restricted their flock data. It's not just us. Pinal County, Arizona, not a hotbed of liberalism, terminated contract. New Bedford, Massachusetts, system suspended. Oak Park, Illinois, agreement terminated. Evanston, Illinois, agreement deactivated. Cleveland, short renewal, vendor consideration. I go down to Amarillo, Texas, pause additional camera purposes. Harris, Texas, one of our largest users, user access suspended, strong audit case code. This is happening all over the country. I'm going to make this plea to finish this up. Sheriff and the Chief of Police in Toledo, why don't you work with us? We are not the enemy when we call for an audit. We are not trying to expose anything, but get some safeguards come in. And I would ask maybe for the sheriff and let's do an audit together. People travel across the county into city lines indiscriminately. We don't know. If we're going to take this on as a community, I would love a partnership with the city of Toledo. And join us, Sheriff, please join us in solving a problem, not denying a problem. Houston, there is a problem. And we want to be part of the solution. We think they should be part of the solution with us. So I'm going to ask them to consider working jointly with the county sheriff and the city police department, with members of council, myself, and maybe my colleagues. So let's put together a reasonable audit, find out what's really going on. In the meantime, let's not continue this. So that's all we have. We'll take any one-on-one questions or collectively if you want to do it now.
Commissioner, if your audit found that all 70,000 searches in Houston were for law enforcement purposes, could you live with that?
I would have to see some data. First of all, how are they granted access to our cameras? And what do you mean by law enforcement searches? Are they a legitimate law enforcement agency? Sure they are. Are they but the bar for us is to access it with no probable cause not needed and suspicious of a criminal activity. If 70,000 of those searches can be returned to us with the license plate searched, with the reason the license plates were searched, with suspicion of criminal activity or probable cause, then yes, I would.
So if Houston came back to you and said, we are working on a major drug operation, and every one of those searches was for a major drug operation that we're getting 70,000 plates we're looking at, and 70,000 times we go drug operation, would you live with that?
I will live with whatever the truth gives us. That's why I want the audit, Sean. You're exactly making my point. I'm not saying we should or should not do this. I'm saying let's use the tool legitimately. If it's being used legitimately, fine. But there's no reason to suggest that it is at this point, given the abuse it's seen nationwide.
Have you been able to get any data of how much we are searching other databases?
I have only the data that the sheriff reluctantly provided me over the last 4 weeks.
Could you live with a world where the data was shared with fewer departments? Or could you live with a world where it was more a narrow crime, for example, that they're looking at?
I could live with a world where it's a legitimate law enforcement tool, and that should be two very basic barriers. Is there reasonable evidence of a crime? Is there suspicion of a crime? Tell me why you're accessing our data for what crime and what license plate. Sure, that's legitimate use of the tool. I haven't seen evidence of that conclusively yet. What I see is 904,000 searches in 3,200 agencies and no clarification.
the pause you're asking for, will you still want them to be collecting data during your pause, or do you want to pause the sharing of the data?
I want to pause at least the sharing of data at this point, embargo it until we do an audit. And I think the idea of a joint city-county audit probably makes some sense, expense, and scale. People don't know whether they're driving through a county road or the city road, they'll cross each other's territory. Again, to my law enforcement partners, let's work on this together, right? Let's not just say no. I really find it awkward when people go to contempt prior to investigation and just say no when there's so much data and evidence that we ought to look at this.
He was pretty clear in his statement that he had no intent to turn off the cameras. What happens if he continues to refuse?
He's a separately elected official. He has to be responsible to our city and county residents, which are also city residents. He's taking that position. He's entitled to take that position. I think it's an unwise position. I'm going to appeal to him today. Look, let's quit being mad at each other. Let's just go for the common good. An audit is a reasonable request. I think in joining the city in that is a more reasonable request. So I'm not looking to take his tool away. I'm saying your tool is not being appropriately monitored right now. And let's just get to the bottom of it.
What authority would you have if an audit was to come up with issues and you want to discontinue use of flock?
I don't have any more authority over the sheriff than I did 2 weeks ago. And I'll say this, going back in history. Originally last year, I voted for it. I made a mistake, right? I made a mistake. Within a week's time, I realized I had made a mistake. I'll own that mistake. But when you do something, Sheriff, come to the same realization I did. I made a mistake and I was willing to correct it. I asked him to do the same.
So you're saying that the sheriff was withholding information for you and data to present these findings, and you want more transparency?
I'm saying he was originally withholding it. He had to be advised by the prosecutor that he could not. It shows an intent of being a little reluctant. And that's his policies, not mine. But as I look at his policies and how wide open it is, it should be concerned to us as citizens, as Commissioner Comize and Councilwoman Kramer and Comize have stated, and people say behind us. There's a growing community need to have questions answered. The data I've been getting has been brief and unexplained. If you have a better explanation for all that, please inform all of us together, not just me.
The Toledo Free Press has requested an audit from the past contract that you put with Flock. How comprehensive is the audit? How far back does it go? You've had Flock for a number of years.
I wouldn't go back, I don't think any more than 2 or 3 months. I think we're going to give a snapshot of activity. I've been told by somebody that behavior is constant in people, so you can find that consistency probably in 90 days, 120 days to do it. But again, what I'm looking for, why was it searched? What was the reason for the search? What the vehicle search brought forward? Was there an outcome of that search? These are the kind of audit questions I think are fair to be answered.
Do we have an idea of how sharing will work? Because if Rossford's sharing preferences allow for national sharing, there is a potential for other organizations to gain data to their data and therefore gain data to our data. Yeah. It's a very big chain. Is there an idea for how to contain that kind of
I think once we get, it's a great question. I think when we get an audit of what's being shared, how it's being shared, for what purposes, we can kind of back into those answers. Right now it's such a wide, hyperscale search, it's hard for me to divine or discern what's the appropriate use, what isn't. But I would love to be part of that. Again, Sheriff and City of Police, join us in helping solve a problem. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.